Welcome to the deep dive. So we got Flo Perry's How to Have Feminist Sex, a fairly graphic guide sent in, and we're going to unpack it today, see what makes it tick.
Exactly. And it's interesting because it's not just, a standard sex guide. Perry uses this mix of like personal stories, humor, and these really clear drawings.
Yeah, the illustrations are quite striking.
They are. And she uses them to explore how feminism kind of weaves into sex, our bodies, relationships. It's a pretty unique take.
So our mission here is basically to pull out the key ideas, the things that really make you stop and think, challenge maybe how you've thought about pleasure or body image or consent.
Yeah, hopefully spark a few sort of aha moments for listeners.
Okay, so right at the start, the book tackles this big question. What does it actually mean to, well, be a feminist when it comes to sex in the bedroom?
And what's really interesting is how Perry just acknowledges the complexity up front. Applying feminist ideals in that really personal space. It's not always straightforward.
Right.
She even says that some scenarios, ones that might seem on the surface a bit unfeminist, can still be, enjoyable.
Provided there's consent, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. That's the foundation. Consent, and also this understanding that maybe the power dynamics in bed aren't the same as they are at work, for instance.
It's kind of like giving permission to square your desires with your politics, even if it looks messy on paper sometimes.
Exactly. And the core message really boils down to a few things for the listener. Your pleasure matters hugely. Consent is just, it's everything.
Non-negotiable.
Totally. And we need to start questioning all the societal baggage we carry about sex and bodies. Oh, and yeah, she just comes out and says pubes are sexy.
Which actually leads nicely into the next bit, doesn't it? Challenging those beliefs we've picked up along the way.
Yeah, that's a big theme. How messages from like parents, the media, friends, they can build up these really unhelpful ideas.
Like what kind of ideas?
Well, classic ones like sex is supposed to hurt for women, or that body hair is gross, or only certain bodies are attractive. You know the drill.
It's kind of insidious how they creep in. And the book really pushes you, the reader, the listener, to actually spot these beliefs in yourself.
And then question them. Like, where did that idea come from? Was it something someone said? Something you saw?
By figuring out the source, you can start to see it's maybe not some universal truth, but just an idea someone else had.
And a massive source these days, of course, is social media. Perry really goes into the negative side of that for body image.
Yeah, the endless stream of filtered, often totally unrealistic bodies. It's so easy to compare yourself.
Definitely. But she also makes this really good counterpoint that social media can be positive too.
How so?
By finding and following accounts that show all sorts of different bodies, different shapes, sizes, skin colors, abilities, it can help normalize diversity.
So it's about curating your feed consciously?
Hmm.
She really emphasizes that difference is what makes us beautiful and that you are always lovable, which is quite a powerful message.
It really is.
Yeah.
And building on that, challenging beliefs, loving your body, she then gets into the basics of anatomy, getting to know your genitals.
With illustrations again, right?
Yep, a clear overview of vulvas, which sounds basic, but Perry points out lots of people are still confused about the difference between, say, vagina and vulva.
It's true. It's fundamental stuff, but not always taught well or talked about openly.
And she doesn't shy away from slang terms either, like cunt, twat, pussy.
Yeah.
She discusses the different feelings around those words.
How some people find reclaiming them empowering, others find them offensive because of their history. It's nuanced.
Which flows quite naturally into talking about pubic hair again.
Right. The idea that removing it has become this huge trend, she frames it as potentially political.
Kind of. She points out it wasn't always the default. It really took off more recently, maybe tied to fashion, bikini lines, maybe media pushing hairless bodies.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Is it purely personal choice, or are we influenced by these wider pressures?
Exactly. Connecting something everyday like hair removal to bigger feminist ideas about who controls women's bodies, it prompts you to ask, is this my choice, really?
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, she then talks about how sex, logically, could be seen as, well, kind of gross.
Yeah, the whole bodily fluids thing. But she makes the great point that attraction and pleasure just completely steamroll that logical part of the brain most of the time.
Like kissing, right?
Yeah.
If you stop and think about bacteria.
You probably wouldn't do it, but you do, because desire takes over. It's that push and pull between rationale and instinct.
So true. And from the physical side of things, she moves on to debunking virginity,
Yeah, the whole traditional idea of it being this physical state, specifically about the hymen breaking.
which is a myth, basically.
Totally a myth. She explains the hymen is flexible, varies massively between people, and can be stretched or changed by loads of things, sports, tampons, not just penetrative sex.
It's so important to clear that up because so much weight, historically and culturally, has been put on that idea.
Definitely. And Perry stresses that losing virginity isn't just about key and V sex. It's about your consensual sexual experiences, whatever they might be.
Which broadens the whole definition. And speaking of broader definitions, she makes the point that penetrative sex is just one kind of sex.
Exactly. And that women are just as capable as men of enjoying sex without needing deep emotional attachment every time.
She normalizes things like one-night stands, casual encounters.
While adding that very practical advice, always change the sheets.
I love the practicality. This then leads into challenging stereotypes about desire, doesn't it?
Yeah, that old chestnut, men always want it, women don't really.
Which is just not true.
Not at all. Perry points out desire fluctuates for everyone, regardless of gender, and so does emotional attachment after sex. The key thing is talking about it.
Open communication about what you want, what your boundaries are, instead of just assuming based on gender roles.
Precisely. And if you're going to communicate your desires, you need to know your desires. Which brings us to masturbation.
Which the book really champions.
Oh, massively. As a form of self-love, self-discovery, stress relief, she pushes back hard against any lingering shame around it.
And suggests it can actually make partnered sex better.
Yeah, because you learn more about your own body, what feels good. You can then communicate that better. She even gives some tips for people who are maybe new to it or hesitant. It's all about owning your pleasure.
That makes sense. Knowing yourself helps you guide a partner. Okay, what about the tricky subject of faking orgasms?
Perry tackles that too, and again, with nuance. She looks at why people do it.
Like maybe not wanting to hurt a partner's feelings?
Yeah, or feeling pressure, especially during penetration, or sometimes it just feels easier in the moment.
But she distinguishes between situations.
Right. Like maybe in a one-off encounter, the stakes feel different. But in an ongoing relationship, honesty is pretty crucial for actually improving things and getting more satisfaction long term.
So acknowledge the reasons, but aim for honesty in relationships. That feels realistic. Okay, now, this concept of a sex accelerator and sex break, tell us about that.
Okay, so this is a model suggesting we all have things that turn us on the accelerator and things that turn us off or inhibit desire the brake.
And it's complex, not just simple turn-ons.
Exactly. It's a mix of psychological stuff like your mood, stress levels,
Yeah.
emotional things like feeling safe, connected, physical sensations, obviously, and the dynamic with your partner.
So it's not just about, lingerie or something.
Not necessarily. And Perry highlights how culture shapes this too, like finding certain uniforms attractive or certain jobs. Those associations are learned.
Right. And she points out that women's arousal isn't always as physically obvious as men's, which can cause issues.
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to increasing desire, the idea isn't some magic pill.
It's about understanding your own accelerators and brakes.
Exactly. Figuring out what hits your brakes and trying to minimize that, and figuring out what hits your accelerator and trying to cultivate more of that.
And those accelerators might not be conventionally sexy things at all. It could be feeling understood or just having a tidy bedroom.
Could be. And she's realistic that in long-term relationships, maintaining that intimacy takes effort. Communication, adapting, it's work.
Which connects to stress, right? The book talks about stress-killing desire.
Big time. When you're in fight or flight mode, your body just isn't prioritizing Bex. It makes total sense physiologically.
So managing stress is key for your sex life, too. Finding healthy ways to cope.
Absolutely. Then a really crucial topic. Consent.
Can't talk about feminist sex without it.
No way. Perry emphasizes active consent. Constant check-ins, verbal and nonverbal. Paying attention.
And she really goes after the idea of male entitlement.
Yeah, strongly critiques that whole nice guy thing or thinking you're owed sex because you bought dinner.
It's a vital message.
Yep.
Nobody is ever entitled to sex, period.
Unequivocally. And for listeners maybe wondering about kink or BDSM, does that fit with feminism?
Perry touches on kinky feminism.
Yeah, basically saying exploring non-vanilla stuff is totally fine within feminism. As long as consent is enthusiastic and ongoing, communication is clear, and you're thinking critically about power dynamics.
So it's about agency and exploration within those ethical boundaries. Okay, another practical, maybe slightly awkward topic, period sex.
Perry just normalizes it.
Yeah.
Says there's no reason to feel gross or unclean,
Offers tips for mess management.
and points out it might even help with cramps for some people. It's about ditching the taboo around a natural function.
Makes sense. Letting people choose based on comfort, not shame.
Okay, then the book zooms out a bit, looks at monogamy.
Yeah. Questioning if lifelong monogamy is really the only or natural way. She brings up divorce rates.
And looks at animals.
Right. Like bonobos, our close relatives, are pretty non-monogamous. Gorillas, more distant, have harems. Humans are somewhere in between, maybe. It just challenges the assumption that strict monogamy is the default biological setting.
Definitely food for thought. And then there's that slightly odd bit about testicle size. Huh? Yes. It's a humorous comparison, but it illustrates evolutionary pressures. Chimps and bonobos have more sperm competition, so larger testes. Gorillas, less competition, smaller tests. Humans. Again, somewhere in the middle.
It's a quirky way to think about mating strategies, I guess.
For sure. Okay, back to modern life. Sending nudes. Very practical advice here.
Consent first, always. Sending and receiving.
Absolutely. Tips on taking photos you feel good about, being super careful about what's in the background.
And just being aware of the risks of sharing intimate images online. Digital safety.
Essential stuff. Then she tackles dating. And she doesn't pull any punches about how rough it can be.
Admits it can be awful. Shares examples of bad profiles.
But also makes a point of celebrating being single, which is important given the pressure to partner up.
Totally. Validating singledom. And finally, on dating, she talks about rejection.
Yeah, with that very direct reassurance. It really is them, not you.
Don't internalize it. Focus on your own worth, not why someone else wasn't interested.
Good advice. So, wrap it all up. The author kind of brings it back to the core idea.
That feminist sex is about choice.
Choice, agency, questioning norms, making conscious decisions about your sexuality, your relationships.
It's about giving you the tools and confidence to define things for yourself, basically, without being boxed in by old ideas.
Exactly. Empowering you to explore what feels authentic.
Okay, so as we finish this deep dive on how to have feminist sex, let's leave our listeners with something to chew on.
A final thought.
Yeah. Think about one belief you hold about sex or about your body. Just one. Ask yourself, where did I get that from? Is it actually helping me? Does it feel true for me?
And what might happen if you started to question it.
Just something to consider. This is obviously just scratched the surface of Flo Perry's book.
Definitely. Lots more in there. So we'd encourage listeners to keep thinking about these ideas, maybe check out the book itself or explore topics that sparked something.
It's a big, important conversation.